It's hard to tell how this is coming out because it's summertime in South Mississippi and daytime outdoors, so it's really bright daylight. So bright that I can barely see the screen on my cell phone. So I'm not entirely sure if this is in frame or focused or anything like that, so please forgive me if this is a poor quality video, but I wanted to make a kind of long-term review video on this Harbor Freight. They sell it as a woodworking workbench. It comes in a kit, flat packed. You have to bolt it together yourself, and I have put it together maybe a year ago now and used it fairly conservatively, I think, for doing some light woodworking. And one of the things that I wanted to point out in this video is the way that this end broke. All the wood, if you look at this joint right here on the table, and right here, and right here, and right here, all the wood on the entire table is put together by splicing little, and I mean fairly little, chunks of wood together with these little finger joints here. And then they take these little narrow strips of wood and glue those adjacent to another narrow little strip of wood. So it's just a glue joint holding these two pieces of wood together. And then they take and make fairly thin, it's not plywood. It would be better probably if it was plywood, but they take and make these fairly thin boards by gluing these strips of wood together like that. And then for the end of the table, there's a vise on the end of the table, and this board here mounts to the end of the table, and the vise mounts through that board. And then when you tighten the vise up, here's the vise. I had to take it off so that I could take this board out, but the vise mounts through here into the end of the table, and when you tighten it up, the face of the vise, which even the vise is glued up. If you can, I don't know how well, like I said, I don't know how well you can see this, but even the vise is a glue up of multiple pieces of wood, but the wood on the vise at least looks stouter, and it's a solid piece going across the vise, and just two pieces of wood glued up on the vertical. What would be, this is the vertical direction of the vise, so two pieces of wood glued up on the vertical and a solid piece going all the way across the vise, but the vise is tightening up against this. And so if you tighten it up good and tight, and if you should be torquing on it pretty solidly for your workpiece pretty solidly for any reason, you can easily break this flimsy little end off the workbench. And I don't know if you can see how this glue joint here failed, but when that glue joint failed, this wood flexed all kind of ways, and it's not usable anymore. It's just because the clamp, where did I put that clamp? Oh, the other thing, here's the clamp. The clamp piece that mounts on the inside is that little bitty metal flange screws to the inside of there. So that is being pulled by this thread. So the only thing holding that from pulling right out is this one little strip of wood right here, which is actually two pieces of wood that's been glued together with this little finger joint here. And if you can see right there the looseness of that finger joint, the finger joint failed, and the adjoining glue joint on this long strip of wood failed. So you have two glue joints, one here and one here, that both failed because of this piece being behind there pulling against that to clamp a piece of stock into my clamp. Now the clamp seems to be fine. I could make a new tail piece for the bench that's made out of a solid piece of wood and put all these parts onto a new tail piece and repair this, and in fact I probably would, but it's almost not worth it, because one of the other things about this table, and you'll see I have this painter's tape here covering up the holes, that's to keep sawdust out of the sawdust goes down into the drawers. If you were sawing on anything, your sawdust will fall down into your drawers because these dog holes on the tabletop go right through and open up into your drawers. So anything that you have in your drawers is going to be covered up with sawdust like that, because your dog holes open straight into the drawers. There's nothing keeping your material from going right through. But the other thing about it, the problem with it is these dogs fit so loosely in there. I don't know if you can see how that wobbles around, but the dogs fit so loosely in there, they're almost unusable. So if you put one of these in there, it wobbles around. These tall ones come, and these short metal ones come with the table, but they fit so loosely in the holes that you just about can't put any clamping pressure on there to hold a piece of wood to your table. Because the idea is you're supposed to put a dog in the top of your clamp. You put a dog in the top of your clamp, and that's a loose fit too. So you put a dog in the top of your clamp, and that wobbles all around. Or you put one of these in there, and that wobbles all around. So with your dogs flopping all around like that, you can't get enough clamping force on there to do anything worthwhile. So the dog holes are walled out, or the dogs are just badly made, one way or the other. You can't get any clamping force with those dogs, so they're virtually useless. So I've covered them up with tape just to try to keep the sawdust out of my out of the drawers. But this table from Harbor Freight, I mean, if you don't have a table, and I suppose that if you don't have a table at all, it's better than nothing. But it's not a lot better than nothing. And for the cost of one of these tables from Harbor Freight, which is not insignificant, for the cost of one of those tables from Harbor Freight, you could go down to Home Depot and buy 2x4 lumber and make a table yourself out of 2x4s that would have strips of 2x4 across the top, to where your top would be so solid you could pound on it with a sledgehammer. It would probably be fine. And that's my point. This table from Harbor Freight is kind of convenient. If you need a table in a hurry, you can run down to the store, and if they've got one in stock, you can buy it, and in a matter of a couple of hours you can put it together. But for about the same amount of money and a little more time and effort assembling it, just a little more time and effort assembling it, you could have a table that's so much more sturdy just by buying lumber and building your own table. Or if you're really in a hurry, you could go down to Home Depot and buy one of these tables like this. These tables like this from Home Depot, they come with wheels on them, and guess what? Not only are they pretty doggone sturdy, in fact, I'd say they're just as sturdy, if not more so, than the Harbor Freight one. They're a little bit more money, but they've got this deal on the end where you can adjust the height of the table. So I bought the Husky table, not as a replacement, but as to use in addition to the Harbor Freight table. And I've been pretty doggone happy with that table from Husky, even though the top on the Husky table is made with the same type of finger joint assembly as the Harbor Freight table. So far, it's one thing, it's thicker. If you look at the thickness of that's significantly thicker. I'll put my thumb up there for comparison. That is probably a little over an inch, and this is probably not even 3/4 of an inch. This table from Harbor Freight is thinner material, and I would posit that the glue that they use to put those joints together with is not as good of a glue, because this table from Harbor Freight, probably also made in China, has been more durable than this table from Harbor Freight. So Husky, I think I said Harbor Freight when I pointed at this one a minute ago, but this is a Husky table from Home Depot, and this is a Harbor Freight table. And this table here, the whole thing flexes. I don't know if you can get a good sense of how wobbly that table is, but the whole table wobbles. If you put any kind of force behind this thing, it creaks and wobbles, and it's not sturdy. And if it was half the price, it might be worth it. But for the price, it's just not worth it, because you could take the same money down to Home Depot, buy a bunch of 2x4s, and build a better table. And the only thing you'd miss out on is these drawers. And these drawers are just, I mean, yeah, they give you a little bit of storage space, but it's just not worth it for the flimsy table. So the only advantage to this table is the drawers. But like I said, you could probably build some drawers for just a few, $20 or $30 more in plywood. It's just not worth it. And I wouldn't, knowing what I know now, I would not buy it again. And that's the whole reason that I'm making this video, is to put this information out there, so hopefully it can help somebody else. Because like I said, I'm not a heavy-duty full-time woodworker. I'm an amateur home woodworker, and I have made that thing right there, for example, that swing and the frame that goes around that swing. But I have made a couple of these swings, and I've made a couple of picnic tables, a few little things here and there as a home use woodworker. So I don't feel like I have abused this table to the point that it should be falling apart like it is, but I feel like it's falling apart, and to make it usable, I'm going to have to take it apart, add some structural reinforcement to it, and then put it back together just to make it usable. It's either that or completely replace it by throwing it out and building an entire table from scratch. And like I said, they claim that this is hardwood. This table, they claim it's hardwood, but if it's hardwood, it's the softest hardwood I've ever worked with, because it was no time and not very hard to do to gouge it up and have it, coming apart on me. Then it could have been a better table, and I was hoping that it would be a better table, but I've been significantly disappointed by it, and I'm just sharing my experience so that hopefully somebody else who's thinking about buying one of these will think better before they go out and make the same mistake that I made. Because, if you just want it to look at, if you're doing some really light crafting type work, it might be fine. But if you're actually going to pound on it a little bit, trying to make things, then you're going to need something that is more substantial. Not only weight-wise, because this thing is light and flimsy. Not only are you going to need something more substantial so that you can actually put some push into it without it sliding away from you or tipping over, but you're also going to want something that's going to be more durable, because the way these edges, they're attached with screws, which is nothing wrong with that. It's screwed and glued, but it wasn't a good enough glue, or not enough glue. Maybe they had a dry glue joint when they glued this end onto the table, because it didn't take nothing for me to pop that right off of there when it started breaking on me. It didn't take nothing for me to pop that right off of there so that I could get some measurements off of it to try to replace it. And I'm going to make an end out of, my plan is to make an end out of oak to take the place of whatever this is. Alright, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.